Hey guys, so I've got a really interesting. There's no like music on my podcast. I don't do like 15 minutes of. I'd like to thank the sponsor. This penis enlargement pill company sponsors me, and recommended by my wife that I take those. But there is no sponsorship here. I just try to get cool, interesting people on, and this one might be. We've never met. We've never talked. I'm a fan of Michael's from Instagram. And I got Michael Mihas on the call today. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Tony. I appreciate it.
Cool. And I'd started to talk for a minute, and I said, "Oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna record right away," because I only follow you on Instagram. But tell us, like, you got like over 100,000 followers on Facebook too.
On Facebook, I got close to 175,000 followers.
Nice.
Which is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And on Instagram, what are you up to?
Instagram, I think I'm almost 18,000, something like that.
Nice. Do you like get up in the morning and count your followers, and that determines your self-esteem for the day and like whether you're going to kill yourself?
It pretty much does. Like what I'm going to do that day, if I'm going to go to work, if I'm going to make love with my wife, anything I do, if I see like a negative count and I'm losing count, it kind of ruins my day. It definitely ruins my day.
Yeah. It's that whole dopamine thing, and it's like it's our cocaine. But of course, people listening know that we are both being facetious and sarcastic and really don't give a shit about our count a little bit because you're trying to influence people. We don't, it's a love-hate relationship for anybody in business or trying to make a difference because it's the way to reach. I just saw, again, you made me smile, and I don't know where you've acquired this level of wisdom and maturity where you got guys said, "Hey, you're not a real man," and you corrected his grammar. And I was like, and that was it. And it's you are, you apostrophe A R, you know what I'm going for, but it was very fun, very funny, very subtle. So honestly, when you read the negative comments, because, I'm friends with Master Ken, which is not his real name. I don't know if you follow him, Amir Dote. Where he's like going, Jiu-Jitsu sucks and ninjutsu sucks. And he's been doing that for years. And he actually like gets death threats and things like that. People lose their shit. Do you get that type of vitriol and hate?
I used to get it really bad, but I got to the point where I'll show you messages, I'll send you later, where people hated me in the message. And then a year later, months later, actually apologized and said, "You know what, dude, I get what you were trying to do. You actually motivated me. I actually lost 30 pounds. I actually went back to the gym. I actually got a better job. I went back to work." So it's getting to the point now where what I originally was trying to do was reverse psychology.
Okay.
And it's actually working now. So
nice.
A lot of people like, "You're so negative," but some people can actually see like you're negative with a deeper purpose. I'm not just being negative because I'm trying to troll you because I want to get likes. I'm getting negative because I know that's the one button that no one in your life has pushed yet. Your mom never pushed you. Your dad never pushed you. Your friends never. Your friends, when you want to give up on something, your friends are like, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that either." And I'm like, well, maybe you should have friends like that. Maybe you should get rid of those friends. And maybe your life will change. Right.
So this is obviously, very, I hate this term, lifestyle management, and very motivational, very inspirational. Your page, Mr. Jiu-Jitsu page, obviously there's this perceived bias. Okay, this is going to be about BJJ. What you're talking about is self-actualization, like something way bigger. Is that your ultimate mission and goal? Is that something that you do on, and like I'm learning about you for the first time as we talk. This is like peeling an onion. So it's surprising in a pleasant way, because a lot of people think of me as like a knuckle dragger just doing scenarios, and that's that guy who he's never been in the octagon, but he's talking about real fighting. And I go, look, I'm 58 years old. I've been studying violence for 43 years. I've been involved in some sort of martial arts combative since the age of 7. And my biggest purpose is getting people to be able to develop better self-awareness through understanding fear management. The vehicle I use is self-defense scenarios, because that's scary shit if you do them properly. So my bigger thing is, like, if you said to me, "Hey, would you rather teach someone how to palm strike somebody in the face, or how to grapple, or how to use a knife or a gun?" I'd say, no, I want to talk about fear and fear management and how that impacts everything we do in our life, from who we marry to whether or not we're going to defend ourselves. So it sounds to me like you have this like way bigger purpose. Talk to me about that a little.
Yeah. Actually, my last goal is to get you to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, I would love for you to use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the health aspects, for self-defense. But my ultimate goal is to get you out of your rut.
Nice.
And I feel like, and I try not to say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I try to say martial arts. I try to say lifestyle improvement. I try to say health improvement, what you eat. I try not to focus on one thing, because what I like and what you like are totally different things. My diet and your diet are totally different. My lifestyle and your lifestyle, my beliefs and your beliefs, whatever political, whatever they are, we all have different things. But I think there's a common goal of not being stuck in a rut, no matter what you believe in. If you're liberal, if you're a Republican, if you're a vegan, if you're a meat eater, there's still a common goal. I think everyone can trot on that line, if you know what I mean. So I try not to say jiu-jitsu. I try to say martial arts, training. I tell people, you know what? If you got 20 minutes a day, be it jiu-jitsu, be it in the waiting, be it in your lunchroom, do push-ups for 20 minutes, run in place for 20 minutes, write something down, read a book, do something to, if you could better your life in 20 minutes a day by doing a number of different things, why not do it?
Right.
And that's pretty much the main thing I'm trying to pass on to other people.
I gotta read more of your posts then, because I mean, I'm not on, I go on at certain times. I try not to go on, because you can, like, you know, there's days where I go, oh my God, like I forgot to go to the bathroom and go to sleep today because I'm scrolling Instagram. Just kidding, everybody. But you can get sucked into it. It's a vortex. But I got to scroll because the ones that jump out at me, I don't know, maybe it's just the universe talking to me, but the ones that jump out at me are and that's why I texted you and said, hey, come on my show, because I find you very fucking funny, witty, sarcastic. And I actually asked Michael, I hinted at like, do you have like a team, like doing like a bunch of guys who are just funny and you guys are writing? And he said, no, like it's just me sitting on the toilet coming up with shit, and pardon the pun there. But do you have another page or other resources, like, or is it just this page and the same name on Facebook and your other accounts?
It's the same page on Facebook, and it's my regular Michael Mihas, my regular Facebook page. People follow me on that too. That's it. I don't have any other ulterior motives. I don't have a martial arts school. I don't have a business.
Really?
I don't have DVDs to sell. I'm just a student. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu almost 27 years. I still compete almost every year. I fought MMA for 10 years, and never once have I wanted to teach anyone. I never once wanted to open a school. I never wanted to produce DVDs. I just enjoy it, like we're doing right now.
Right.
Talking, debating about it. You know, I just enjoy talking about the lifestyle of training, of dieting, of theory, stuff like that. I've never had any interest to make any money off this. That's
interesting. It's probably why you're successful, just because there's no agenda, you know. But you know, in the agenda, if we did like really get psychobabble deep, is it inspires you to inspire other people. So that's the agenda is very positive. It's a real win-win. Can I ask what you do in the real world then?
I'm a construction worker. I'm actually a bridge painter. I travel a lot. And that's the main reason why I actually started this page. I started this page because I travel a lot for work. I travel all over the Midwest. So I was stopping a lot of gyms and train. Now I was like, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to make a page so people can see the gyms I'm at. So if I'm in a city and I type it, they'll be like, hey, come over here and train. So that's the only reason. So one day I just posted my thoughts on there. And everything I post isn't just something out of midair. It's usually something that happened in my life. It's an interaction. And I'm like, man, this motherfucker, I'm going to write this. So this guy stood me up to train. And I forgot what this, I was like, you know, that feeling when the guy says you can't train, but he just posted online how he's meeting his buddies at the bar.
Right.
And the next day I had like 20 followers. The next day I had like 200 followers. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And all these pages started showing. And I was like, I'm going to start posting my thoughts again. Then the next day, then I had like 1,000 followers. I'm like, but that's really weird for, you know, a nobody construction worker in Ohio to have 1,000 followers. And then people start sending me messages. They're like, man, I think just like you. I'm just too embarrassed to talk about you. And I wish people wouldn't do that.
Right.
And then within like 2-3 months, I had like 10,000 followers. I'm like, this is pretty crazy. And then I started making like some videos from my car. I would, on my way to work, I would grab my phone and make like a 1-minute video. I was like, man, you know, this and this happened today. And it's just, then that would start getting shared. The next thing I know, I had like 30,000 followers. And then it just, it blew up into the madness it is today. And it just seems like people connect with what I'm saying because it's ordinary people's thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
I'm conveying them. It's the moments of anger that you don't really want to say out loud, or you're embarrassed to say it. I'm willing to say it. Or
Right.
something that happened between a friend or a colleague. You're like, man, if I could just say that, and I'll just say it for you in my
It's
own weird
nice.
way. In my own
It's
weird way.
it's nice, and it's not weird. What's the any? Do you ever fantasize about figuring out a way to, in a very classy way, monetize that?
You know, I would like to make the page where I could connect with more people. I like to say one-on-one, which is impossible.
Right.
You know, I would like to go. I've been offered to do a lot of seminars, and I turned them down. I've been offered to actually to do like some motivational speaking events. I'm not a motivational speaker. A lot of people think I am. I'm not. I'm a 45-year-old construction worker, has 2 kids, and whenever I get time in my day to talk about jiu-jitsu, this is what I do.
How old are your kids?
I have 2 boys.
How old?
6 and 8 years old. 6
Nice.
and 8 years old. Yeah.
They do taekwondo?
Yeah, the diehard taekwondo. They just got. We're gonna go break boards later.
Nice. I just saw that your recent video about that. And it's interesting because what I did is I'm hijacking the conversation because it was because of your schedule, because of your family. It's hard to do one-on-one. You could do. Listen, there's you may not be the motivational speaker like by, there's a lot of business people that I follow, and I've got some friends that are like 1,000 times more successful than I am. I mean, I'm in awe of their success, and I watch like how focused and how they're like freaking machines, and they've got that proverbial work-life balance. And I'm like, and so even though I'm 58 and I've been working since I'm 17, and I work my ass off. I work harder than I feel like than 10 people, but of course we all are subjective and biased and think we work our ass off. The term, like the industry is so inundated with like life coaches and motivational speakers, and they often talk about people selling shit online who've really never built anything. Right? Like it's like the guy standing on his boat with, hot chicks standing behind him, and he's selling you real estate, package, but he really has never even done it. He's just got a guy who's got some private investors, blah, blah, blah. So the idea where people are connecting with you is you may not be a motivational speaker, but you're speaking in a motivational way. And the fact that you're like, just, like, hey man, I fucking paint bridges and I'm just trying to be the best dad I can and stay in shape and be a good husband. Like, I think that resonates with more people, and there may be a way for you to, and I don't know what it is, to monetize it, not for the sake of making money, but at some point somebody might want to talk to you for like a half an hour and pick your brain. And you could do that. You could just set up a Skype or a Zoom account and just say, hey man, fucking Venmo me or PayPal me some money for my time. And you just figure out what that is. That's a whole rabbit hole to get down. And I would encourage you. I think you'd have a lot of fun. You have your own podcast, correct?
It's more me ranting.
Yeah.
15 minutes. And I had like a real guest. Yesterday I had this lady on, we talked about self-defense, which was, I really enjoyed it. And it's just like, if something like's going through my head and you catch me, she sent me a message yesterday. She caught me at the right moment. I'm like, you want to come on my podcast to talk about this? She's like, yeah. I go, we'll do it in a few hours.
And it was good.
It's like, I'm very spontaneous with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm very, and sometimes it's bad. I'm very spontaneous. Like if there's something that like my mind's on right now, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's talk about it right now. Let's clear the air right now. Let's talk about it right now.
That's good. But I think that's why you have fans, is because there's nothing pretentious. It's like I overthink things, but I'm also so transparent and so honest that a lot of people are offended by that. I don't have that balance. They like think I'm pissed at them all the time, and usually I am. That's true, but no, I dig it. So, do you have a process? Do you like a comedian? I got a couple of friends that are professional comedians, and I'll see them working a joke They know this is going to be funny, but they got to work the syncopation, the timing, how long it's going to be. It's like a band figuring out, okay, for this to be a hit, it's got to be this many minutes, and it's got to be ideally in one of the two of these keys for, and so there's real raw talent there, but they understand there's a formula too. When you wrote I'm going to read this one here. I have it up here. Dear Pakistan martial arts suppliers, the day you guys make a special underwear that my balls don't get rearranged like Mr. Potato Head when I go for an armbar or triangle choke, I promise I'll return your messages. Dude, I almost spit out my coffee when I read that because, I don't know if you've been to my page or checked out what I do.
I have.
So, I spent 5 years building this high gear suit, which we've sold over 30,000 of them, since 1993, mostly used by military law enforcement, some MMA, and some martial arts schools that are more into reality-based scenario type stuff. But I get emails every week from manufacturers, mostly, from Pakistan and out there, and some from the Orient, and they're all like, hey, best prices on gloves and this and that, and we'll make your. And so for me, like, I wonder if a lot of people, you had 873 likes on it, but I wonder, like, if a lot of people went, oh, that's kind of, it's funny because what you said about your balls and Mr. Potato Head, I get that. And if you ever put an armbar on somebody and you're a little bit off and you were well endowed, you understand, and guys listening to this, if you've armbarred people and never had any pain in your groin, it's because you have a small penis and small balls. And that's just the way it is.
That was also part of the post. That was also the deeper meaning in the post.
Right.
Making fun at guys for having small dicks.
Right. Sorry, guys, we can't help you. And that comes back to what I started the show with, sponsored by the penis enlargement people. But anyhow, so I read this and like spit out shit out of my mouth, I think, because I get like if you're in the business and you're getting these emails, this is like funny on 3 levels, So here's my question to you. What happened one day you're sitting on the toilet or you're sitting in your car, you open your email and you saw, because like you didn't write that or think that after your first, like, right, you got like 1,000 of them over 10 years. So what was the process? Did you just see it and hear it, or have you been mulling it over?
I'll be on my phone and I'll get that vibration and I'll get my emails. So they've somehow attacked my work emails. But now they're attacking people who are friends with me. And I'll have messages from people that are like, hey, it says me and you are on my Facebook. I have over the limit of friends. So people can follow me on my regular Facebook, Michael. Right. So when they see that, they'll send my friends messages. My aunt, that's never done any kind of training.
Right.
My uncle, who's a goat herder in Greece.
Right.
I have no idea. They're like, it says me and you are, should I accept this guy? Do you know this guy? I don't want to offend him. And not even tell him I'm not interested in buying any martial arts clothing. I don't do martial arts. And I was like, you know what? It's time to drop the bomb on them. Because I know how many people get that. I know it's not just me, like you. Everyone is getting that. People who just started doing martial arts are getting it. People who are friends with martial artists, so have nothing to do with martial arts, are getting these messages because they're an acquaintance. And I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure at least 80% of the people are going to get this. Right. And 20% are going to get offended. Right. And people still get offended. People are like, well, you're racist toward Pakistan people. That is, it just, there's always in one of my posts, somebody will always find it. Yeah. Appalling. It's you singled out. And I had people from Pakistan sending messages that actually train martial arts. Like, we're not like this. And I was like, I'll respond to those people. If you're trying to troll me, I won't respond. If you're being serious, I'll respond back. Dude, I was not talking about you. And sure. And I'll go a little deeper into it. But there's some people who are just, no matter what I'll post, they're going to find the bad part about him. But I actually post for them too, because I know they're going to respond. I know they're going to get angry. So I say stuff like that. And I got to admit, I know who's going to like it, who's going to get offended, and who's going to take the wrong way and the right way. Nice. Which is why I enjoy making posts like that. It's like, if you insist something's white and I know it's black, not only am I going to tell you it's black, I'm going to call you out on your stupidity, why it's black and why you can't see it. And that's kind of where I take my post in whatever I'm talking about. Right. It's good. If you insist that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't work, like you shouldn't have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to your striking, I'll be like, okay, that's cool. But, there's this little guy, 170 pounds, UFC 1, voice Grace, who did it. But don't worry about him, We'll just talk about your theories that you never tested before.
Right.
That's why I take my posts. So I do think about stuff before I say it like that. And I know who's going to get offended. I know who's going to troll me.
It's good. It's good. It's funny. I know people, because of my reputation, my background, they're dying. They're wondering, okay, when are they going to talk about self-defense? And I may not, just to fuck people up. Like, oh, I listened to the whole show and they didn't do that. But now I've revealed my reveal. But we will talk about self-defense. I'm trying to think. There was one other that it was just so good. It was when I think I first contacted you the first time. But you have so many. But it's interesting to understand your background and see and learn about that. And I had no idea that you didn't teach and didn't have school. I just assumed you did.
Yeah. Everyone thinks I have this ulterior motive. I either have an administrator. This is a business run.
Right.
And the best is when people are like, he's just trying to push jiu-jitsu. He's just trying to push his
Right.
diet. I'm like, if you look at my posts, I never tell people what to do. I've never told anybody what to do. I've never asked anyone to even share my page. A lot of my friends are like, is that you? Are you Mr. Jiu-Jitsu? I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're like, why didn't you tell me you had a page? I'm like, I try to let everything happen organically. I try not to push anything, because I feel like as soon as I say, hey, follow my page, or you should do this, I feel people take a step back. They're like, whoa. Now you're telling me what to do? So, and I know some people, you just got to let it happen naturally, whatever it is. Be it like you talk about your self-defense stuff. If you really want someone to follow self-defense, I think you being the best example is the best way to get someone hooked. Especially the negative people. Those negative people, they'll come around eventually. They'll be like, you know what? Fuck it, man. I like what you're talking about. You know what? That does make sense. I know I thought you were an asshole. I thought you were full of shit. I thought you were just trying to push something. If you show the lifestyle of whatever you're doing, I think people will come around eventually. Might not be right away. Might be in a few years, but they'll come around. Right.
No, I agree with that. It's a tricky thing. And so let's talk about self-defense for a minute. I created this kind of like visual, because I do a lot of talking to different groups, from, martial artists to special operations to, women interested in self-defense. And my message is deeply misunderstood by business people in the martial arts industry, because there's that scarcity mindset of like, well, if I agree with Tony, then maybe I'll lose a student, and that means I'll lose $1 and all of that. People don't realize I don't have a school. I train trainers. I coach coaches. And our focus is understanding specifically the startle flinch response, its relationship to danger, how every victim of violence who ever lived to tell the tale has been interviewed has talked about having a bad feeling before the attack, from trained operators to, the woman who's out on a date and then suddenly finds herself getting raped. And I don't talk about jiu-jitsu or taekwondo or guns or knives. I talk about people as a human weapon, that you are a human weapon system, that there are things that my premise is people know how to fight. They just don't know they know how to fight. That what I'm talking about is fight back, that everything starts with the decision. So I've had, over a career that spanned like 30 years, I've talked to people who said, and he was on top of me, I thought he was going to kill me. And I said, you know what, I'm going to die, but it's not going to be today. And that's when that light switch flipped. And it wasn't, they didn't go, oh, that's when I did an omoplata, or that's when I did the Sean Connery, Presidio attack to the jugular notch. It wasn't a technique. That we don't give ourselves permission to fight back until we manage our fear. So my whole training is all about the 2 seconds before the actual big collision and what you're doing with your situational awareness and self-awareness. And then I talk about, when people ask me, well, what do you think about jiu-jitsu? Or what do you think about taekwondo? Or what do you think about this? I go, listen, martial arts from the complex motor skill point of view are usually, there are empirical tests like MMA, like jiu-jitsu tournaments, like the UFC, that show you empirically when bodies collide and there's fear and danger, that shit gets messy, shit gets ugly and shit usually goes to the ground. And I always tell people, I don't know if you ever caught this and stuff, and this is me blowing smoke up your butt, is that the hardest person to take to the ground is somebody who has no fear of the ground. And I talk about that in the self-defense realm for people, because there's a lot of people that are not going to go study jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, boxing, MMA, you know? And I say, listen, if you can improve your situational awareness and your verbal de-escalation and manage your fear, you can avoid most confrontations. And so that's really the art and science of what we do. And a lot of people look at it as, so I created this thing called the categories, where I go, hey, category 1 is all classical traditional martial arts. Category 2 are combat sports, like where people are actually pressure testing things. Could be Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, boxing, Thai boxing. Category 3 are reality-based self-defense, like Krav Maga and that sort of thing. And then category 4, I flip it and I go, category 4 are the fucking asocial predators in the street. They have their own category. I had a friend who was stabbed, just missed his heart. He had an altercation in a bar, and you know, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. The guy turned around, he pulled out a knife, but he did it very, very non-telegraphically. And then he turned back on the guy and just shoved him back like a 2-hand shove. And the fucking knife went in between 2 of his ribs, just below his ribs. But my buddy did not know that he'd been stabbed until he started to get weak and looked down and saw blood pouring out of his shirt. Like the spear system doesn't work there. Jiu-jitsu doesn't work there, right? Like taekwondo doesn't work there. And so my big message is like, what are you training for? What's the category? Does your system talk about situational awareness, self-awareness? Do you get into the psychology of fear? Do you know how to de-escalate things and avoid stuff? Because if you've ever been in a real violent encounter, I'm not talking about like a douchebag fight. What are you looking at? Shit is very different. You know, and because people are always saying to me, like, what style is best? What's this? And I wrote an actually treatise online where I said, this is about the person teaching you. It's not about the system. You know, there's lousy spear instructors and there's great spear instructors. There's lousy jiu-jitsu instructors. There's great jiu-jitsu instructors. But the real ones will talk to you about the emotional, psychological part, and that'll change your presence. Anyways, that's my little rant. But I wanted your deeper philosophical.
Yeah, I want to ask you some questions about that.
Yeah, go for it.
So you train that part of the body or that part of the mind to understand the situational awareness. How does one get to that part? Like, how can you tap that 45-year-old mother that never worked out in her life and tell her, hey, there's this part in your mind we can tap into situational awareness. How do you get her, like, how do you get her to even get interested in it? How do you get her off the couch? Because that's something that's really interesting that you told me. How do we get that average mom and dad, that construction worker that comes home and instead of working out wants to sit on the couch? How do we get him to understand situational awareness?
So here's the thing is I have, again, 58, been teaching professionally since I'm 17. And when I was 20, I stopped teaching. This was like way before the UFC. I was doing like it's really inspired by Bruce Lee. So I was doing like force on force where we were grappling and punching and fucking kicking and on concrete, just like beating the shit out of each other. And so that was, a lot of people did that. That was like that was caveman MMA, you know, just fucking, let's just do everything. One of my students got his ass kicked when he was 20. His dad was a good friend of my family. He knew I was into martial arts. He said, hey, we teach my son. He's having a bully issue at school. I said, absolutely. He said, how much are you going to charge? It was 1980. He says, how much are you going to charge me? I said, Joey, I'm not going to charge you, good friend of the family. You know, I've known you for years. We got a massive thunderstorm here. I hope we don't lose power. Hang on a second.
That's bad. You guys got the thunderstorms. We have the Antarctic weather this week here in the Midwest. It was -8 earlier.
We had nasty. We had nasty weather.
I saw it on the news.
Yeah. Hang on a sec. I think my dogs are outside. I'm just going to pause this
Go ahead.
Yeah, we got 4 dogs. They're all inside, but like that, I don't know if you heard the thunder over here, but the sky just opened up right now. But the dogs are all inside, but we got a new puppy. So he's kind of freaking out over but anyways, so really quickly, Joey said to me, and I didn't answer your question about the dogs. I didn't even know there's two. We got a new one called an Armenian Gamper, which is going to be this 150-pound. I'd never even heard of it. My vet had
Armenian what?
Armenian Gamper, Gampr. Google it. Does
the dog come with cauliflower ears?
He's dude. The way they clip them, we're not touching his ears. They're so cute and floppy, but they clip him, and he looks like a badass. Like,
you gotta send me a pic later.
150 pounds he'll be when he's. But we also have an Italian Mastiff. We got a Golden Doodle and two. They're brother and sister, and they're Anatolian Shepherds.
So if you need another reason not to rob Tony's house,
5 dogs.
What you just heard. Rewind what you just heard.
Yeah.
Dog with cauliflower ear.
Right.
Guard in the house.
Yeah. They got finally 2 old, but we had 2 Filas, Brazilian Mastiffs.
Those are nice.
Oh my God. And they
were. Now, isn't there something about the Fila dog where it can't be registered with the AKC? Is that correct?
Yeah, the certain areas they're just too violent. They're just too. So you can't train the Fila like you can train, let's say, a shepherd for protection. They have something in them. If you Google Fila, Fila, the Brazilian Mastiff, every website says these dogs were, bred to. And I always love this line.
Right? Jaguars.
What's that?
Jaguars, right?
Yeah, they were to hunt jaguars and runaway slaves in every wiki thing. Wow. And I went, because my slaves are always taking off over the fence.
So it's a racist dog. Okay.
Yeah, I have no jaguars, but man, those slaves were like always trying to escape. And so we got those dogs. But anyway, so here we are, 1980. I don't know how many years ago, but it was long. And Joey says to me, I want you to train my son. I said, okay. And what am I going to teach him? I was, again, influenced by Bruce Lee. I had a grappling background, but back then, this is like 13 years before the UFC, no one thought that your wrestling background was a platform for real self-defense, or real combative martial arts. So that was like, but I had done that for years. The only school that was open around me was Taekwondo. Back in 73, that's all it was. But I would roll out of bed. Before I got out of bed, I was smashing a Makiwara, working on my knuckles. I do, a bunch of push-ups and spar my way to the bathroom and then brush my teeth. I worked out 7 days a week, total fanatic. And I loved boxing. And I'd gotten in a fight when I was 15 years old and this is classic, you'll love this, where teacher was out of the classroom and the kids were all 15 and start fucking around and yelling. And there's this kid there, Lance. He was a school nerd, but he was a bit of a provoker, a bit of a dick, but he was one of the guys with the thick black glasses, like literally had the white tape there. He probably didn't need it, but he put it there so he looked like a nerd. So he's a bit of a he was a shit disturber. And so one of the kids went and got down on his knees behind him, and his buddy pushed him. And Lance went flying into, the little practical joke, just, tipped him. He went flying into the cabinet. All the kids started to laugh. I was standing right beside them. It had nothing to do with that. I'm standing right beside him. And I started laughing too. But when he got up, he saw me. He thought I was the guy on the ground. So he fucking shoves me. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he comes at me. And it's like a behavioral thing. Like if someone starts to chase you, even though you don't know why, like you might start to run if there's like some tension in the area, right? Like it's like, what the fuck's, like you start to move. So he shoved me and then starts to move towards me, and I ran, and like we're running around desk, and I get to the back wall, and I turn and my hands are up. I'm 15, all I'm doing, again, Taekwondo and wrestling. My hands are up, my fingers are splayed, my hands are outside 90, which are now like cueing positions in our de-escalation stance. And I'm like this, and I'm going, dude, fuck, what are you doing? He goes, you think that's fucking funny? And he's like, we're 15 years old, right? And his veins are pumping, the carotid's going, and he's taunting me. And I go, look, and all I hear is my instructor, Alex, my Taekwondo instructor, saying, if I catch any of you or hear of you fighting outside the school and it's not true self-defense, you're out, you're booted. And I love my martial arts so much. So part of me is going, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight, man. It wasn't me. You're confusing me. I wasn't the guy. And then there's another part of me who goes, like, my intuition's going, like, this guy's fucking livid, and it looks like he's going to fight. And I grew up in a nice area, so I wasn't fighting every day. So it wasn't like, oh yes, no, it was, like I didn't have that like threat discretion experience, but there was something intuitively that said violence is imminent, but it wasn't happening. So I was trying to diffuse it morally and ethically. Everything was sound there. And then at one point, I see he's getting more red. His veins are coming out of his neck. He blades and he starts to load his right hand. And he says, come on, you fucking pussy. I'll let you have the first punch. And when he said the word punch, I knew he was going to swing right after that. I just knew, here we go. When he said the word punch, I threw one of the world's shittiest jabs on the letter U of the word. Because I'm standing like this, like, hey, man, calm down. Yeah. And I fucking threw this, like, my sister throws a better punch than the one I threw. But I hit him in the face because we're close. He rocks back and immediately, like, ricochets his overhand right because he was already locking and loading it. Mm-hmm. And it came right after me. My hand was coming back, and this is my first time my arms came up, and I did this startle flinch, and his fist and forearm careened off my hand, and he fell in past me. So we're in this like shitty upright clinch, and I immediately grabbed his fucking head and spun it into a hip throw where my wrestling suddenly kicked in, whipped him to the ground, never let go of his hair at the time. He landed hard, and while I was still holding his hair, flung him into the desks that were right beside us. So his back went flying into the desk, and he was winded from that. He's on the ground, stunned. And I point at him, and I go, if you get up, I'll fucking kill you. I was livid. And it was at that moment I realized I was finally in a martial arts stance. Up until then, I hadn't been. And when I had my back to the wall, one thing that I left out was significant. When I had my back to the wall, Michael, part of my voice is going, he's too close to kick, he's too close to kick, he's too close to kick. And I was like literally saying, shut up. Like in my head, Alex was there going, you better not be fighting. He's too close to kick. And I realized that this is neurons and myelinization and brain science and neuroscience. And now here we jump ahead decades later where I'm working with scientists and neuroscientists and brain specialists because I'm working at very high levels in the government with certain units and organizations. They need that white paper level, like what's going on here. And what I realize now is like when you have an unconscious bias, whether it's to your knife, to your gun, to your pepper spray, to jiu-jitsu, to taekwondo, to boxing, what your brain does is it tries to look for situations to deploy that skill set. And this is just brain science where you won't think, if I say, hey, let's go out for Oriental food and you love Chinese and I meant sushi, but I hate Chinese, we get to the restaurant, I go, what are you doing? You go, this is a great Chinese restaurant. I go, man, I meant sushi because the umbrella was martial arts. The umbrella was Oriental food.
Yeah.
And believe me, trust me, I'm still tracking your question about the 45-year-old couch potato. How do we get them to situational awareness? This is the background, the substance under, because this isn't like I didn't create a widget. This is a really organic evolution of my system.
I can tell. I just from the way you're saying it, I could tell how much you put in your heart's in this. I can tell.
Thanks, man. It's been my life. It's been my life's work. I appreciate you noticing that.
This is what I enjoy. I enjoy when someone like that is talking. This is what I enjoy. But keep going.
Good. Thank you. I dig that. I dig your honesty. So here I am. I'm 15 years old. And you'll appreciate this. I'm 15 years old. I win the fight, but it's total chaos. My heart's fucking racing after. I got an adrenaline dump. I don't even remember what I did, but I remember what happened. Finally, the teacher comes in. Everyone sits down, all that. And I was just getting my learner's permit and my driver's license. I think I was turning 16. I was 15 and a half. I immediately sign up. I find a boxing club to go to because where my head went was, dude, that punch was so shit. Had you hit him properly, that would have set up the combo that would have ended the fight, would have knocked him back. You'd have been able to like round kick him in the head and do a spinning hook kick, whatever. I'm making fun. But I immediately looked at it as a flaw in my toolbox. And I went to a boxing gym, and I'd already been training at this point, like every single day. I started Taekwondo when I was 13, so I was 16, 3 years. Every single day I trained. So I had good movements and instincts. I was a good athlete. I was competitive in other sports. I picked up stuff quickly, and I was a fanatic. I boxed consistently for years, loved it. But my passion was martial arts, and my specific passion was self-defense. Jump ahead 4 years later, I'm working out at my dad's. I'm working for my father, manufacturing company. I'm a shipper in the back. When these big shipments would come in, I'd be like, well, this is before Rocky was pounding meat. These big boxes would come in from the Orient with clothes, and I'd be fucking wailing on them and nailing them. So Joey sees me doing this. He says, hey, I want you to teach my son. Fast forward. What do I teach him? Well, I've never taught before. I teach him what I understand about boxing, what I understand about kicking, what I understand about grappling. We're sparring. We're makeshift. About 3 months later, he gets into the fight. And what was interesting is about a month earlier, he said to me, this guy's really, really fucking getting in my face. And the schools weren't doing anything, 1980. And he says to me, when can I fight? I go, Mitch, I'm teaching you self-defense. I'm not teaching you fighting. And I tell people now, all these years later, I'm not going to teach you how to fight. I'm going to teach you how to not fight. If you have a business, if you're a grown-up, if you live in a litigious society, if you have kids, you don't want to get in a fight. Fights are for douchebags. There's violent encounters, and violent encounters are always started by the bad guy, an asocial motherfucker who only wants your property, your body, your life. And what you choose to do in that moment can impact the outcome of what's going to happen. So here we are. I say to him, Mitch, how's your blocking? How's your slipping? He goes, not so good. I go, how about your striking? He goes, not so good. I go, I suggest you don't get into a fight, right? And I'm making fun, like you don't have any skills yet. So he's training every day because he's got this imaginary fight that's going to happen. About a month later, and what I told him, I said, listen, right now it's just verbal abuse. He's never put his hand on you. If he puts his hand on you, you got to do something, because that's where accidents happen. You know, someone punches you, you flinch, you get punched in the throat. Now you need a tracheotomy, you fall down, you hit your head. Bad shit can happen there. So sure enough, a month later, he's running, he's late for class. He's only 15 or so years old at the time. And this kid is sitting at the back against the locker banks with his buddies. He trips him. Mitch goes flying with his school books. Everyone starts to laugh. He picks up his books, but he's been verbally abused for like 3 months now. He picks up his books and he says, you know, under his breath, you fucking asshole. And the guy goes, what'd you call me? And he gets up, right? And he goes, you know, like fucking macho, chest to chest, right? He goes, what did you say? Say it again. And Mitch looks at him. He goes, what's your fucking problem, man? You fucking leave me alone. You know, and the guy goes like, what are you going to do? And he pokes him in the chest, and Mitch loses it. He's so angry. He grabs him and slams him against the locker bank. So how do I find out about the story? I come for his private lesson that week, and he's sitting there fuming. And I go, what happened? Because I knew right away, body language being 60% of communication. He goes, motherfucker. And he like Vesuvius, he erupts. I go, dude, calm the fuck down. What happened? He tells me the story up to this point. He says, so I grabbed him and I slammed him against the locker bank. And I said, don't fucking touch me. Don't put your hands on me. Leave me alone. And then he stops talking, like the story just ends. And I go, and what happened? He goes, he dropped me. I go, what do you mean he dropped you? He says, left hook just dropped me. I go, well, dude, why didn't you slip it? Why didn't you do anything we did? And he looks at me, Michael, and he goes, well, I was holding him with my left hand, and I had my school books in my right hand. And it was almost like the god of self-defense fucking hit me with a lightning bolt in 1980. And I realized, I said this, we teach self-defense wrong. We teach self-defense from after the fight starts. How to get out of a headlock, how to pass somebody's guard, how to block a kick, how to disarm a knife, how to disarm a gun. Every gun drill, if you've ever been taught like weapon takeaways, it starts with somebody sticking the weapon out in front of you. And I make this joke.
Always.
And I go like, if you're teaching someone how to get a headlock, like the defender puts his head down and goes, can you get me in a headlock? And I go like, think about that. You know, the whole 10,000 hour, 10,000 rep metaphor.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Malcolm Gladwell made that famous. I said, if you do 10,000 reps of a gun disarm, you've also done 10,001 reps of letting somebody stick a gun in your face. So your brain, your situational awareness is allowing somebody to get into your personal space, because in training, you allow that so that you can practice the counter. So you're already, I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, get off the X, get to the left of the ambush. Have you ever heard an expression like that?
I have.
So everyone talks about that. What they're talking about is situational awareness, but then the training is someone says, hey, head on a swivel, and then they go, okay, get me in a choke, throw a kick, throw a punch. So all the training is after impact. So we redefined 2 years ago, I wrote a new definition. If you Google the definition for self-defense online, it'll say something to the effect of, depending on where you go, the physical act of protecting your property or your life. Even the definition starts after the physical attack. We rewrote it that when danger is imminent, choose safety. The decision to choose safety when danger is imminent. So you and I might be in a bar, and I go, you see those three guys there? If they keep drinking, they're going to fight. And I think that guy's carrying a gun. I don't like the layering on his clothes. Let's get the fuck out of here. Like, that's my self-defense, right? Where someone else is walking up going, what'd you say? Because they've never been taught or thought about the courage it takes to move away from the danger. And this is like a self-esteem, dignity thing with a lot of guys. I've had guys quit, like walk out of a seminar or a class because our fighting stance looks like nonviolent posture, Trojan horse, hey man, I don't want any trouble, where most guys want to be. And hey man, you watch a guy who doesn't understand stuff saying, hey man, I don't want to fight. He's usually bladed and one of his hands are starting to ball up. And he's going, man, don't make me hit you, right? And he doesn't understand that. Yeah, body language is 60% of communication. Anyways, all of this since 1980, I have just been studying violence. That event, I took it to heart so bad that, like, I really felt like he lost that fight because I didn't understand what I was doing, and I was just regurgitating self-defense like in the yellow pages based on what I had taught before. And it wasn't that anyone was malicious. That all the striking, elbows, headbutts, gouging, biting, shin kicks, lateral vascular neck restraint, armbar, all of that, I look at that as accidental, incidental transitions to resolve the violence. Meaning, if my situational awareness is compromised, suddenly I'm on the ground, I better fucking hope that I understand ground fighting and grappling. That if a guy suddenly produces a knife as I'm pulling money out of an ATM machine because I picked the shitty fuck. You ever look at, this is a joke I make. I got 2 ATM videos. You should Google them. Tony Blauer ATM.
I definitely will.
Yeah. And I talk about this idea of like, why are you at this ATM? ATMs, the location of most of them were designed by muggers. They're in fucking some shitty place with shitty lighting. Why do you have to get money?
Always shitty lighting. Always shitty lighting for some reason.
So my thing, so what I'm always trying to do so that my message is consistent, I'm always saying to people, like, do you really need to go to this ATM right now? Isn't there another one like inside of a mall, inside of a gas station, like where there's witnesses and other people? Like, why are you here? So we do 3 types of seminars to answer your question. How do I get people motivated? That construction worker, that 45-year-old woman who's never thought about jiu-jitsu or taekwondo or boxing and maybe never will, I tell them, listen, if you understand situational awareness and you understand the fear spike that happens when you go, fuck, am I being followed? Is that guy now looking at me and now pretending not to look at me? That's a scary moment where what most people do is they put down their blinders and they think they're in a bubble and they think the cavalry is going to rush in. And I like to remind people, you're the first responder in your confrontation. First responders are the second responders. The shit's already happened for the cops to be there or somebody to come, intervene. So what we do is we have a very specific program on how to pick up dissonance, how to read body language, what people, when I tell you that bad guys only want one of 3 things and these are them, and they don't want these things to happen, that message is very clear. And so there's a block of training we do that actually involves 0 physical contact. And so I might have like a seminar with 20 women or 20 people who are afraid of any contact drill. And I say, listen, if you can improve your situational awareness, you enhance your survivability because you know what to look for. and your people who don't know what to look for, now they're right on the X, going, how the fuck did this happen? So we have, like, in our trainer development class, I make this joke. I go, roughly 100% of the people who, right? Like, what's 100%? All of them. All of the people that go to our trainer courses, because I don't really teach individuals, are individuals like yourself, like very experienced people who go, you know what? I don't know a lot about the psychology of de-escalation or the psychology of fear management, other than, you know, you clearly have figured out shit on your own. And having the courage to step into a ring or go to a competition is different than putting something in the trunk of your car and then hearing footsteps behind you and turning around. And then, and that's something that we talk, because I have a lot of people I trained who they've been in gunfights, they've been in knife fights, they're retired military law enforcement. They still come to our course because it's the research of what I call the blueprint of violence. That, look at this as a metaphor. I go, look, you got a handyman, you got a carpenter, and you got an architect. You know, who has more skill sets? Let's assume that the architect at some point, you know, has decided, after building some houses and stuff like that, I'm going to get my degree because I want to fucking design buildings. And so the architect understands way more about that's not a good place to build, and that building's not going to, you know. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to teach people about the blueprint of violence, the totality of it, so that, because what that does is that changes your instincts and intuition and your intelligence surrounding violence. So, I mean, that was a very long rant. I don't think I breathed.
But but I like that this all started, like, your whole system started when you were 15 years old.
Yeah.
You may have known, but at 15 years old, you started re-engineering self-defense.
Exactly. And that's
the attack. And that's what amazes me right now. And which I tell people all the time. It's, some people have to go through something in their life to develop a system, a way of thought. Like me, I lost my father at a young age, and that made me very aggressive. That made me step into a cage. Within 3 weeks of just watching a UFC video, I stepped into a cage in Iowa, and I had this aggression. So it's always something in our past that makes us what we are now. To think how yours was so influential. You get attacked at 15 years old. Something clicks in your head. I do this. He moves like this and this. And now here we are so many years later, and you develop this beautiful system. And that's why I tell people, like, you don't have to go through what Tony went through, I went through. We can talk about our experiences, and then you can draw from that, which I think is beautiful, that at 15 years old, you developed a system about, hey, instead of getting the gun in your face, let's go back a few minutes. Let's go back in time. If we're at this bar and we see what's happening, let's go back in time again. And I really love that. I really
thank you. And
that was pretty fucking awesome. I like what you said, Tony.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Listen, you know, a lot of people think, and it's cool to have this conversation, because a lot of people think, just like when people think you're bashing other martial arts when you make a comment, you know, so like, I teach kids, and I tell them, I go, listen, your son or daughter can't fight off an adult, male or female. Like, that's fucking physics, right? And it was so funny when you did your thing, and that's science for you, right? But what I do is I talk about, again, teach kids about situational awareness, teach them about soft targets and breaking contact and running, but they're not going to stand there and spar. It can't be a mono thing, and what to do there. And the reality is, I'm trying to give people, first off, the emotional psychological tools to help them believe in themselves, because at the end of the day, if it's already happening, wishful thinking or sticking your thumb in your mouth and sitting there in the fetal position, that's not going to fucking work either. And so how do we empower and inspire people? And I always tell people, guess what? Size matters. Right? And you know this, like, how many times you hear in the martial arts world, someone says size doesn't matter. I go, hey, weight classes, motherfucker. Right? And I go, you can be the best driver in Ohio, and I'm the best driver in California, and we agree to demolition derby, and we pull out of a hat the vehicles we're going to use, and you get a Prius and I get a fucking Hummer. It doesn't matter how good a driver you are anymore. You know, for a moment you might be able to do something, but when we hit, size is going to matter. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. So I tell people size matters, but size can't matter. And they go, what do you mean? That's confusing. I go, well, you're not going to be bigger. You're already grown up. So, like I'll have a small person go, is it possible that, I'm only 5'5" and I weigh this? I go, you don't have a choice. You need to figure out shit faster. And so the most important thing that we can do is improve our situational awareness by improving self-awareness and managing our fear. And there's so many things that people can do, but at the end of the day, they've got to believe in themselves. There's a nuance that people don't talk about or get into at a behavioral level, right? And where it's got nothing to do with mano a mano. It's this predator-prey interaction, and it's like a black box thing. It's like where you see someone, you go, fuck, I don't want to fight that guy. Not that you can't, and not that you don't have the courage. It's like, both of us are going to the hospital. Let's just walk, and it's a hard thing because unfortunately, we are both in a very macho type A community. I mean, if I could monetize my haters, man, like I'd be a bazillionaire.
I wouldn't be paying bridges anymore.
Right. Exactly. So I just did that big rant on that. And I don't know.
Actually, I want to get into that a little bit. I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
I got this message. I get a lot of young kids follow me.
Yep.
And it's cool. And I'm shocked that like 13-year-old, 14-year-old kids follow me. I think it's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool that they follow me. And I got this message from this kid. I did a video about a year ago, and he was getting picked on at school. And his dad told him, man up. And he says, when the bully touches you, I want you to punch him right in the face. And I asked him a couple questions. I go, have you trained any kind of martial arts? He says, no. I go, has your dad shown you how to throw a punch? He goes, no. My dad's just told me to man up. I told him, that is the worst thing you can do. I go, the worst. First, he was telling me the kid was 3 times his size. I go, the worst thing you can do is punch this kid. Do whatever it takes to avoid going near him. Even if you have to give him your wallet, even if you have to play dumb and laugh when they make fun of you, do it until you can find a safer place. I told him I would love to speak to your father, which never happened. And my point was, you get these parents, which these are generations that happen with the X generation, snowflakes, whatever generation you're on. It's been happening all these years.
Right.
Parents think that by telling their child to man up, be tough, that's going to solve the problems. And I think that's where these kids get into this depression, where they get into these deep, where they start hating their parents because their parents never taught them anything. And I'm not saying you need to learn, mom and dad, you need to learn how to fight. But if your child, especially something like that, the last thing you should do is tell them to fight back with a bully. And people always get pushed back on that. They're like, we're going to let him get pushed around. I go, no, but you have to do something. Once you as a parent hears that, you have to do something. Tell them to fight back is probably the worst advice you can give a child.
Yeah, it's and I see the controversy because I remember my son, he's 28 now, and big. He's a fitness coach at a gym up in Los Angeles, and he's freaking like 200 pounds and could probably pick me up over his head and fling me through the wall now. But I remember when he was like 4 or 5 years old, I used to like trained all my kids, right? I would teach them how to kick and knee and elbow and palm strike by taking a balloon and turning it into like a buoyant, like hacky sack. So I'd put it at a weird angle. I go, try and kick it with your leg. And I was developing all this eye-hand coordination, dexterity. But, and I would teach them little things. And one day, my wife's got some girlfriends over, and there's a couple of kids over. And one of the kids comes flying into the kitchen screaming that Nick hit him in the face. And my wife calls me in and she goes, hey, Nick just hit this kid. And I went, whoa, what happened? And the mother's glaring at me, and I go, what happened? And Nick goes, he grabbed my toy from me. And when I went to take it back, he pushed me. And so I hit him. And he looked at me, and all the women are looking at me in the kitchen like, okay, Tony's going to freaking do not. And I looked at Nick and I said, Nick, did you hit him with an open hand or a fist? I told you if you hit someone with a fist, you could damage your knuckle. You could break your fist. Always open hand when you hit somebody. It's safer. And they all like looked at me like in horror, right? And
how could you be condoning it?
And I looked at them. I said, you should teach a kid not to steal, right? And it was like I made some joke, and everyone fucking hated me. So I get where you're coming from, and and I see both sides of it. Like if it was somebody I knew and I knew the bully, it would be like, hey, dude, I'm gonna put you in some self-defense classes. And I love jiu-jitsu for kids. There's so much value there, and I really believe this. I tell people there's a really good jiu-jitsu school near me, and before I injured my neck and my facial nerve last year, nothing to do with well, I got a bad head injury in 1986 that just something happened, but I travel a lot, but I'd go to Studio 760 down the street. Like I love, and I tell people, like, they go, how do you do in jiu-jitsu? I go, I would rather fight 3 guys than go to jiu-jitsu because it's so humbling. Like I would, getting my ass kicked all the time. I accidentally went to a black belt class one night. I wasn't looking at the schedule. And because people know who I am, no, Tony, you'll be fine. Come in there. It was one of the, like, I don't think I moved for 3 days after. I mean, it was just like, I was so sore. And I tell people, like, when I was learning about boxing, I went to Gleason's gym in New York in the 80s and sparred with some pros. I got flash knocked out. I got my nose cracked. Like I went in there, and I would do it as, like, before the term social experiment was a thing. Like they didn't use that term. I go, like, I wonder how I do against like a really good boxer, because when in my schools, everyone, even though I didn't run the school like with a fearful energy. We never bowed. We didn't have belts. We didn't like the sign on my door said functional self-defense, no rituals, no uniforms, no nonsense. And we just trained. And so there was no but I knew that everyone was afraid of me because I was the instructor, just in the same way you're afraid when the math teacher comes in the room. The teacher's here. It's just part of society, right? So I would do these things where I go out. And so I leave there telling people agreeing to only box a boxer is fucking scary and humbling, and nobody hits harder than a boxer if you're just boxing, right? And so all of that, and I forget what we're talking about. We're talking about bullies, but I remember my son Nick getting choked by an older kid. The kid had grabbed his hoodie and choked him. They had an argument with some kids from an older grade, and when I came home, Nick told me about it. He said I walked away from him, and the guy grabbed my hoodie and yanked me backwards, and he said. He started choking me, Dad, and I was scared. I said, well, what did you do? And he looks at me. I go, Nick, what did you do when he started choking you? And he was like 7 or 8 at this point. And he looks at me, Michael, and he goes, I go, no, not what did you do? What did you do when he was choking you? He goes, it was like nothing. The teacher saw, and I was being dragged backwards. Well, guess what I made him do right away? I said, get me your fucking sweatshirt. And we did scenarios, right? From that 1980 epiphany I had when my student lost, I immediately had him get his books and grab me, and we replicated the things that you would do. And that was the beginning of understanding.
So you didn't tell him just to go be a man, to man up.
Yeah.
To man up and just go back to drinking your beer on the couch.
I bitch slapped him twice, and I said something like, you're a pussy, man up. I think that's what I said.
He had a Bud Light and sat on the couch.
No, yeah.
Okay.
And what I did is I actually dry shaved him with a Gillette razor before their commercial. Obviously now I couldn't use
that.
Gillette. Now I got to use like a Bowie knife or something.
There you go.
But it was interesting because what I did was I did some training with Nick and showed him, like, on a hockey player, when a hockey player gets his the hoodie drive over his head. Back of the jersey. Now the guy's fucking uppercutting him. You got to learn how to get out of that shirt really quick, right? You got caught. You got to get out. So I started teaching him, like, when the jersey's going, how to spin in and fucking drive your head into the guy's sternum, and knock him off balance, because moving forward is always faster than moving backwards. How to spin it, and we do this so that he would get these pre-contact cues and how he would spin. And here I am, like, with an 8-year-old doing scenario training, making him safer because he's my son. Because I said to him, listen, trachea, Adam's apple, soft tissue. The guy might have been just being a jerk, but depending on what you're wearing and how hard he pulls you, you could damage your trachea, and that could really injure you. And I said, don't ever let that. I said, next time that happens, you need to fucking turn around and smash that kid. So here I am, and I'm answering this in a very, I always talk about like the substance under something instead of say agree, disagree. Because I need, at the end of the day, you and I need to be options facilitators for legal, ethical, and moral reasons. Like Michael doesn't say you should do this. He goes, this is my life experience. And let your intuition, and that might change when you're 16 and now you're 20 and you finally understand it and you come up. And so my son says to me this, and this is really the point of the story. He says to me, Dad, I'm not allowed to fight. I'll be suspended. I'll be kicked out of school. I said, yeah, but I would rather get a phone call from the principal than a phone call from the hospital. If somebody is attacking you, you need to protect yourself. And he goes, but Dad, they said in this, I said, Nick, I want you to memorize this line and I want you to say it to the principal or to the school teacher. And this was the line I made him memorize. If somebody were physically harming you, would you like permission to be able to defend yourself? So imagine an 8-year-old kid saying that, right? Right. And so my answer, philosophically, 100% I agree with what you're saying, because you got somebody, this is like the Prius versus the Hummer. Right? Size matters. Plus, if you don't know how to hit, does the guy fucking nail you because you pulled back this big John Wayne punch and he just drops you? Do you break your hand on his face and he looks at you and then beats the living shit out of you? Or in this day and age, you're 45, I'm 58. We came from a generation where if you got in a good fight at school, you might be shaking hands or being friends with the guy, or like the next day you kind of acknowledge each other.
Those days are over.
Yeah, now pussies come back with fucking gangs and guns, right?
Well, just think about when you got in that fight when you were 15 years old. If that would have happened in 2019,
yeah,
you'd have been on World Star. The kids would have been clapping in the background. You'd have been all over Facebook.
Right.
You would have had your big 15 minutes of fame.
Right, and the other kid might have fucking killed himself out of shame.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
or I'm getting sued and my parents are getting sued. You know, it's things have changed so much. So I agree 100%. My thing when people talk to me about bully situation is like, is this a real threat or like a real physical danger threat? Is this escalating? Because you need to involve the school and maybe the authorities. I'm sorry. And guess what? The impact on your kid's self-esteem and dignity has already started. You need to find a good self-defense school. And notice I say self-defense because the best self-defense instructor may actually be teaching wushu, like some fucking, you know what I'm saying? It's like somebody who says,
or to break boards.
Yeah. Well, but he may be a better instructor for that 13-year-old than the Jiu-Jitsu school that has a Cobra Kai like mindset. In other words, and that's what I want to get past. And I'm glad we're having this like really cerebral talk about this, because I always tell people like grappling is visceral. Everything else is vicarious. Oh, I would break your knee here. Well, you can't practice that. Here's where I would shoot you. Well, you can't practice that. But everything in grappling you can practice. You can't pretend armbar somebody. You can't pretend strangle somebody or choke somebody. Tapping out is real. The danger with it is what I talked about earlier, and I'll share something here, and I can't mention his name here, and I'll tell you offline, but it doesn't matter. It was a military class. This guy is a great instructor. He's a world-class jiu-jitsu player, and he was a guest in the class because he does some stuff with these guys. And in one of the scenarios, they're wearing our high gear suits. We've got training machine guns, pistols. We're teaching this transition where the attack happens and the guy's got his long gun. He muzzle strikes the guy, and then the bad guy falls back and then passes the gun and shoots in, like for not a double leg or a single leg, a shitty tackle, because he's being a role player in a real fight. You're supposed to, at that point, get hit, push away, so you weaponize the forearm. So we talk about weaponizing and startle flinch. The forearm hits the guy. It's like a forearm shiver in wrestling. And then at that point, you keep him off. You drop your long gun, transition your pistol, and come out where you can actually contact shoot the guy or cover an opposing threat. It's a very specific military SWAT type scenario. The guy with the jiu-jitsu background kept on when the guy went low, would drop his arm off and immediately come up and guillotine the guy, then come out the other side and transition. And I would say to him, don't go to the guillotine, just keep pushing the guy away and go to your pistol right away. You're adding 3 seconds to the transition by doing that. And he kept going, okay, got it. But he kept doing it. And I'm going like, what is this? And I happened to be reading the book, The Talent Code, at the time. I don't know if you ever read it, but check it out. You'll love it, dude. It's the study of neuroscience, specifically neurotransmitters and myelinization, on how when you do something a certain way, your brain, the neurotransmitter, develops its own. There's no such thing as muscle memory. People think it is. But the brain, and I realized in that moment about on his 5th rep where he did the guillotine, like a partial guillotine transition, I realized he didn't even know he was doing it because he was so amazing at jiu-jitsu, so world-class, that it was like bang, bang, and then he'd come out. He didn't even notice he was doing the transition. It's really funny because for 20 years, teaching military and law enforcement, there's something I do. I'm going to change my angle here so you can see my hands. That when I'm teaching an empty hand class and I stop somebody, I'll always do this because my neurotransmitter myelinization is so ready to draw my pistol.
Going towards your weapon, yeah.
Right? And so people would start doing it in class, but this is like a regular martial art class. They're emulating me, right? You guys can't see this because it's audio, but I'd stuff the attack and then my hand would go back. People started doing it and I'd go, why the fuck are you moving your hand there? Get ready to underhook the guy. Get ready to scoop his elbow and fucking hit him with a shot. And they go, because you're doing it. And I'm going, I'm doing what? I had no idea I was doing it. So,
because I'm pretty sure what you're doing,
yeah,
I do. I have
nice.
a guarantee. If someone tries to tackle me, I'm gonna go for that guillotine. So you're right. That's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go for, if someone puts their head down in a double leg, I'm going for the guillotine.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna go for my gun. So I guess maybe that's just.
Do you carry?
You're right.
Do you carry?
I did.
Nice. I'm going to send you a video I did at the Arnold, one of the Arnold fitness expos, where I called up a grappler out of the audience, total cold, had no idea who he was, and demoed the spear versus a tackle versus a guillotine, because the forearm intercepts. So if the guy comes at you, and like, guys, we've forgotten that we're on a podcast and we're just actually doing this video here. You guys have all run out of gas somewhere if you're driving.
I'd love to see them doing your arm like that.
And so we're actually on video here, like doing shit, smiling at each other. Completely forgot this is an audio podcast, and people have turned off and go, Blauer fucking sucks. They just talk, forgot this. But I'll send you the link to it, and I'll actually put the link in the show notes so people can see it too and reference it. But the idea here is, if I'm in a real confrontation, so if I'm in a jiu-jitsu match or an MMA match and I've got a superior guillotine and my ground game is better, and maybe I got a shitty punch that makes the guy panic and he shoots under, and I go, fuck, this is like chess, right? I always say jiu-jitsu is like chess with muscles at 100 miles an hour. And dude, I'm the queen and you're the fucking pawn, and boom, I got you. But in the street, I'm here like this. When the guy moves, the first thing that'll happen is the startle flinches, the hands push away the danger. That's just physiology. So the first thing that can hit a guy is, in your forearm is like a windshield wiper. So if you were in a big rainstorm, Michael, you just had some big storms, but it was snow, right? For you guys, it was freezing. You have a big rainstorm. Do you want little windshield wipers or big windshield wipers?
Big windshield wipers.
Big ones.
Yeah.
So your forearm is like a fucking windshield wiper when somebody swings it out. Right? Yeah. So it's like, whack, those hands come up and they form this big fucking, I call it the organic airbag, that when somebody attacks you suddenly and the hands come up, it's like an organic airbag deploys. We always say spear's a bridge to your next move. If you don't have a next move and the guy's still fighting, he's going to kick your ass. So that's why I always say, you come to our seminar because the most important part of a real confrontation, not a douchebag fight, but the most important part of a real violent encounter, if you can't avoid it or de-escalate it, is weathering the ambush, because the asocial predator usually attacks first and suddenly. And so what I show people, if a guy goes to tackle me, is that hand hits, he's got to bounce off the forearm. If the forearm hits him and stuns him in the brachial, that sets up a guillotine anyhow. But if he bypasses because of sweat or blood or speed or a lowered center of gravity, this slows him down and I still have my guillotine. But what it is, it's this, when I say get to the left of the ambush, what we're looking at is if the attempt to double leg is countered by the guillotine, that's a stimulus response movement. If we're looking like a formula for DOS, if then go to, he double legs, guillotine.
So you're chaining everything off the. There's a chain to the.
Yeah. So, but
then your chain of attack starts.
Yeah. So we reverse engineer it. I go, what happens? So I'll look at somebody and I'll go, I want you to double leg me, but don't bend your knees. And they're like, what? Like, there's all these pre-contact cues that have to happen. I go, okay, you can bend your knees, but don't bend at the waist. And they're like, what? Okay, you can bend at the knees and bend it in the waist, but you can't use your arms. Like so we look at things like, this is all brain-based training where we're getting your intuition, your instincts, and your intelligence to go, holy fuck, there's like 19 pre-contact cues. But if I only ever do it, go back to what Gladwell made famous, that 10,000 hour metaphor. If I only look at the double leg as a move to trigger a guillotine or to pull guard, then I don't look at all the other pre-contact cues because I'm just waiting for that to do that. And that's the for self-defense. This is incredibly important. In competitive sports, less so because that's the chess match. I had a guy that
but I still think even in competitive, there's still some formula to that can be used. You know.
Yeah.
About more of that reaction. You're talking about that instinct. You know that. Reaction. You know how maybe we've conditioned ourselves. I know just from what you're talking. I know I've conditioned myself in some really bad habits. Just like if someone double legs me, my body is already doing multiple precursors. I'm bending at the knee. I'm sprawling back.
Right.
You know, it's so that makes a lot of sense.
Good. Well, I'm glad. I'll send you some videos, man, as a gift. I love your honesty. Because here's the thing: is like if you sprawl. I always make this joke in class. I go, you know, in order for you to do a good sprawl, what has to happen first? Your opponent has to tackle you. If you sprawl early, you're doing a fucking burpee. Why would you do a burpee in a fight? Right? Right?
Yeah.
And so like sprawl drills are burpee drills, right? Burpees suck. And so I go, you need to wait for the tackle to do the sprawl. And if your timing on the sprawl is off, if you're too fast, he kicks you in the face or takes your back. Or if you're too slow, he takes you down. So you're working at this fucking precise intersection of trying to slam those hips into the guy and intercept. Where I go, guess what's faster than all of that? Faster than all of that is the startle flinch. How do we know this? Forensically. But when someone goes through a car windshield, there's always trauma on the forearms. Every knife fight, there's always trauma on the forearms. Right? And so the startle flinch it bypasses cognition. If you can weaponize it and turn it into something, we train a lot of MMA and Jiu-Jitsu guys that dig this and they understand it and they use it to manipulate. And also what you observe, the more you understand about functional movement, you can be three moves ahead of the guy. You can go, okay, I see where he's going. I'm doing that. And you do that in Jiu-Jitsu. If you're like some guy's on top of you, go, I know what he's going for, you know, and you move like that. But it's fascinating.
I love the way you've broken it down to like a science of that startle flinch and how you could use it.
Yeah.
I mean, just from what you told me, I can see like mistakes I do and stuff I've been accustomed to where I think I'm a specialist at. I'm like, oh, you're right. I have to do certain things needed for me to happen to go in those positions. And I'm not steps before that, which makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you need to, what in layperson's terms, and you get this, but I'm just sharing this with the audience. For you to do the counter to the headlock, you need to be in the headlock. Like that's the, you know, so there's a part of your brain and people go, well, so when I say you need to let the guy put you in a headlock to do that counter, they go, well, I wouldn't do that. I go, but this is where neuroscience comes in. That your brain, if you do all the reps, so there's a very famous video, I'm not going to get too graphic with this. There's a very famous video that's like 2 decades old called Ultimate Survivors. And it was produced by Caliber Press. And it's interviews with cops who lost their guns in gunfights. And it's wheelchair bound, cops missing half their face, shot in the face, all cops that lost their weapons and survived the attack. Each one of them said, he target glanced my gun. And then he was on me. So target glancing, he looked down at my gun. So you're inside, you're about to arrest some guy, he looks at your gun, boom, he's on you. So everyone listening to this, when I heard that, the first time I heard that, I knew where the counter has to start. The counter has to start when he looks at your gun. not when he's on you. And if you look at conventional weapon retention training, it starts with a role player grabbing your gun, and then you practice stabilizing and pinning the hand and hitting the radial nerve.
So what happens when someone looks at your gun? Does your hand go on the gun? Do you protect the gun?
Well, the first thing to do, like if we're standing here like this and I'm talking to you and I see you look down at the gun, the first thing I do is deploy that startle flinch. If I change your range, I change your ability to grab. So the first thing I do is I push away danger. That allows me, now you're moving backwards. I can now shift into a stance and transition, and my hand's already out. It's so simple. It's insane. It's just deploy your personal airbag, and it's so simple that people don't want to, in many cases. I'm not talking about the people that get it. They go, there's got to be more to it than this. This is bullshit. But what I'm trying to do is Bob Willis, a very, very famous, he's retired now, but he co-authored a very famous book in the law enforcement community called Street Survival and the Tactical Edge. In their encyclopedic stuff, he saw me teaching in 1993. He comes up to me after, he says, you teach the 2 seconds before the fight everyone else teaches. And I was like, fuck, I like that, right? Because if you don't weather the ambush, if you're scared shitless, unconscious, or dead, it doesn't matter if you're 10th degree in the martial art that you made.
Yeah, nothing matters.
Right? So it's fascinating stuff. My whole passion, just like when we started this talk, where you said you're just trying to get people to introspect and become a better version of themselves by thinking about these different concepts or these different ideas. My whole thing has been my passion since my student lost that fight is, how do I get people safer? How do I help make people safer? And so I didn't go, oh no, no, you're this style. Like people in martial arts, we might as well be talking about liberals and Republicans, right? There's so much animosity in politics where I'm going, and it's funny, we come full circle. It was like what you said is like, it doesn't matter if you're vegan or carnivore. What you want to be is healthy and happy. You want to be successful emotionally, psychologically. You want some spiritual wealth. There's a lot of really wealthy people who are on their 3rd heart attack and 4th wife or husband because they're fucking miserable, but they got money, right? And so at the end of the day, regardless of our particular belief system, so I look at all these categories of martial artists and I go, listen, there are some very skilled martial artists who, there's one story I talk about in certain talks oh my God, I just forgot his name. He was like a world champion Thai boxer. Oh, I can't believe I just forgot his name. I talk about him all the time. That's how old I'm getting. Is in San Francisco, where he was outside teaching. The guy had like 4% body fat. He was part of the Fairtex team, sponsored by Fairtex. He's outside working with his students, fucking nailing shit, doing stuff. And a guy comes by speeding, loses control, and hits his car in front of his students. And then the guy speeds off, hit and run. So here you are in tie shorts, sweating, ripped like Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon, with gloves on, in front of your students, and a guy hits your car and drives off, and then gets stuck at a light like 100 yards away. What do? Right? This guy goes running down the street barefoot there. I can't believe I fucking forgot his name. I'm so embarrassed. Runs up to the door, fucking stands in front of the door and gets shot through the door. Wow. And dies right there. And I say, in no disrespect to him or his family, but I go, he confused the categories. He confused his category 2 skill set for a category 4 fucking storm. That the guy in the car was a guy who had stolen a car, had a gun, and what did he do? He's a scared pussy fucking coward with a pistol. Doesn't have to be a big trained guy. He's got to be a guy that's has how many pounds pressure does it take to pull a trigger, right? 7 if you haven't manipulated it. Like kids can do that. Mm-hmm. And what does he do? He looks up. He's boxed in by cars. He looks up and he sees a guy with fucking like in tie shorts with gloves on going, get out of the fucking car, maybe punching at the window. And he shoots him and kills him. And there's stories whether it's jiu-jitsu.
I think that's the hard part. Like you said, your system, I don't know, but that category 2 to 4, it's that anger. It's especially right. When it's something that happens on the spot. We're human beings. And just like when someone calls you a pussy, a bitch, or this and that, where we go from the category 2 to 4 and we don't see the danger going from 2 to 4 sometimes equals death.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, my friend, I always talk about self-awareness. Are you like, I tell people, like, if you, like, and I've had guys, and you probably talk to people like this, I don't know, man, like, I'm never looking for trouble, but every Friday night I seem to get in a fight. Well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, always at this bar. I go change the bar, and if it keeps happening, it's you. Change your friends, and if it keeps happening. Like, if you don't know that you're an asshole or a jerk, or that you stare at people, or like, and that's self awareness. That's self awareness. So, the whole thing is, like, when I came online, and I said, uh, man, that's horrible what happened. But here's the thing: is just because you're a world champion kickboxer doesn't mean you can run after everybody and get in a fight. There was a video, my buddy Tim Larkin, who's a former Navy, does like a real street system, but he uses a video, did a really good analysis of two MMA guys who've been in the UFC getting their ass kicked in Brazil by four guys. Started in a 7-Eleven type place, over a couple of women. Have you seen this video? This
I get, every time I post something about jiu-jitsu, somebody always says me something anti-jiu-jitsu. So
yeah.
I'm sure I have. I'm sure.
Yeah, so what happens is this, but people don't know how to dissect it. Like, I try to dissect it in a way where hopefully at the end of it, people go, he's just trying to make me safer. Why am I angry? And I tell people, like, if you get defensive listening to this, you're lacking self-awareness, and that will impact your situational awareness. I'm not saying stop jiu-jitsu or stop taekwondo or stop tai chi. I'm just saying, what would you do right now if you and your family were in a potentially violent encounter? Are you going to lie on your back and say, come here, get my guard? Are you going to double leg the guy? Or how are you going to have the courage, the wherewithal, the situational awareness to grab that improvised weapon, to move your family, a verbal de-escalation, to realize, holy shit, I stopped breathing, I'm holding my breath. If oxygen doesn't keep going to my brain, I'm going to fucking make an emotional decision. You talked about, hey, you're a category 2, someone does something, calls you a pussy, and suddenly you get this anger spike. Well, that's self-awareness and understanding there's a reason this asocial motherfucker is targeted you. And you may not be able to avoid it. And then you better have some skills. But at the end of the day, regardless of your skills, like everyone who fought Mike Tyson during his heyday and got destroyed, you could see the difference between their bravado when they were in training camp and then walking out to the ring. You would see a lot of guys going, like, they're almost turning to their corner going, hey, we already have the letter of credit, right? I'm paid no matter what happened. Like, you just tell they were like going, I'm going to try and survive.
They already knew before it was
right.
The outcome.
Yeah. And so, and that's in a sport match. Imagine thinking in a real violent encounter going, oh man, I'm going to get my fucking ass kicked here. So,
but it's that human element too. Like, me as a father, if somebody was to touch my 6-year-old, 8-year-old, as
bingo.
Calm as I am, as much as I talk about self-defense, as much as we talk about not going from 2 to 4, I don't know what's going to happen though. I pray to God it'll never happen. Hopefully I use situational awareness and I put my family in those positions. But if it does happen, I can never say for sure I won't even go from 2 to 4 very tranquil, or am I going to go from 2 to
10?
I'm going to run up on this guy and get shot because I didn't.
Right.
Because how do you condition? How can you condition your brain?
It comes back to when I was talking about the mental blueprint, the blueprint of violence, of understanding bad guys only want property, body, or life. Understanding, do you have a personal directive? Like everyone who does our course, Michael, they got to write out a directive, and some people don't do it and some people do. But your directive, it's like your operating system when you open your laptop or your phone. If you had to write code to open up, an app, you'd start fucking writing letters again and mailing them, right? If, like, to send an email, it took you an hour to write code. You go, fuck it, I'm going to call them on the phone. And so what I tell people is, like, you got to have a directive. My personal directive is, when faced with the threat of violence, I will do everything I can to avoid the violence and to get out of that situation with little violence occurring to both me and my attacker. That gives me permission to run, to barricade, or to fight, because I now need to look at the scenario, threat, discriminate, and decide what to do. And what I decide what to do is going to be impacted by my emotional, psychological self-control. So we got a whole block in the course called the cycle behavior, and it's the neural circuitry of fear. It's
now, do you these courses? I don't want to go. Do you
yeah,
go around? Do you go around Europe? Go around the country?
yeah, all over the world. So we have a trainer's course, which is 51 chapters, a preload. People got to study it before they come in the course, and then it's a 2-day intensive. Everyone who comes to that is already trained in some other stuff, and we're teaching them, like I say, his spears like the fascia, the connective tissue that makes everything work. You weather the ambush; those hands come up, you hit back. If you're fucking amazing at Taekwondo and you can kick the guy in the face, and you're not sitting in a car or in a bus or in a subway or in a crowded mall, right? Like range matters. Like I ask guys, would you rather have a Barrett 50 caliber, a sniper rifle, that's got accuracy up to a mile, or a Derringer, which has very little accuracy? And people go, oh, give me the Barrett. I go, yeah, you forgot to ask what's the scenario. Because if you're playing cards and cheating at cards in the old West, you want the fucking Derringer.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so, but if you're on the top of a building, if you're on the top of a building somewhere and the bad guy's coming at you from a distance, that Derringer is not going to help you. And so there's a time to strike. There's a time to grapple. There's a time to bite. You just got to know what it is. But none of that means anything if you're scared shitless.
No.
Like, you got to give yourself permission to protect yourself. So a lot of it is like going, and listen, I've been doing this for decades now. So my evidence is the data of people emailing or contacting me with things like, my most favorite email is, this almost happened to me. Right. And they're talking about how they avoided it. Right. And of course we got some like crazy, and the fight happened, knife fights, gun fights, crazy shit. Because, and here's the things people don't realize is my students aren't, just regular citizens coming into my school at the mall. My students are law enforcement and military. So like, I've had 2 decades of people going, this works and this doesn't work, so it's pretty cool.
I say my message inbox is my database. It's my Siri. It's right. It's my encyclopedia. That's where I learned so much stuff. I'm like, okay, this person said this person went through this person reacted like this. And it's just, I tell people, like, where do you come up with this stuff? I'm like, my inbox. That's that's my Google. I Google my inbox and I get information. And when you interact with more people like you do, just your database gets bigger and bigger.
Well, what's fascinating about, and just getting to know you, and I hope our relationship continues, is that you look at things in a very, I'm going to use an obnoxious word, non-pedantic philosophical way. Pedantic, folks, look it up. You fuckers, expand your vocabulary.
I'm going to look it up first.
Yeah. Pedantic means like somebody who's like obnoxious about their scholastic achievements. Like a professor is pedantic, makes you feel like he talks in a way that makes you feel stupid. I use that word on purpose. Is that you're, like I said at the beginning of the show, you're very psychological and philosophical without coming across pedantically. And I think that's what's so attractive. And you guys can't see this, but like when I was telling the stories of my evolution and my observations, Michael's face, as you could see, he's like going, man, like, this is real. This really happened. This is organic. And that's what I tell people. Like, I didn't hire a New York, advertising agency and say, I need a cool acronym because I want to come up with a new self-defense system. This was totally organic, and it's still evolving, to this day. This stuff that I was talking about with neurons and myelinization, neurotransmitter, that happened in 2018, where I didn't realize, but now I can explain why my hand was moving a certain way, or why this very experienced Jiu-Jitsu martial artist was doing something during a force-on-force scenario, and he didn't know he was doing it. And there I was correcting him, thinking, why is he always slipping in his jiu-jitsu? But he didn't know he was doing it. It was just a myelinization pattern that was created from decades of training a certain modality. And my message...
It's amazing. You're looking at martial arts from a clinical, a psychological view. And I think a lot of people don't approach it like that. People approach it with, how strong am I? How tough am I? what a badass I am, what
Agreed.
titles I have. And you've taken it to another way. And it's really interesting, Coach.
I had a guy last night go, hey, I really like the spear, but I wish you didn't call it a system because I don't think it's a system. I disagree with that. And like somebody tagged me on an Instagram because it was a post that I did where it was actually started with a cop was at a seminar, and he says, he private messaged me. He said, I was at the seminar and everyone's talking about the spear. There's a lot of guys that don't like it because they just see it as this physical move. They see it as like another block. And he says they were talking about like, why not you eliminate the flinch by training it? And I go, well, you can't. You don't eliminate the flinch. What you do is you train yourself to weaponize the reaction of the flinch. You don't want to flinch in a real fight. If you're flinching, it means you're caught off guard. It means your situational awareness is compromised. It's like somebody trying to sneak up on you and you see a shadow and you turn and they're like this and you're going, I see you. You're not going to flinch. But if you turn and they're right here and you go, oh, fuck, and you're like, and they're right behind you, you will flinch. And then if it's danger, how fast do you convert that psychologically, emotionally, and physically into a counterattack? And so they're talking about this. And so I made this post where I said, you can't eliminate the flinch. What we're doing, what the spear system does is teach you to recognize it. And if you improve your perception speed, you decrease your reaction time. That the more awareness you have, the faster you can act on something. And this guy has nothing to do with it. He randomly posts, I don't think it's a system. So I Googled the definition of system and I pasted it there where the dictionary says a system is blah, blah, blah. It's comprised of interdependent components to make up a collective whole. And I said, we study physiology, physics, and psychology, and we look at what the body wants to do prior to any training because that's what your startle flinch will do. Then we look at the way to weaponize that. That's understanding kinesiology and biomechanics. That's the outside 90 finger splayed. And then we need to have a psychological system that says, I support this next move because I understand the human weapon as a structure, as an organism. And then when I buy time and I push away the danger, I create this workspace where now I'm over here, I can palm strike the guy, eye gouge him, I could duck under, take him down. I transition based on, I always say, force must parallel danger. So what are you going to do now that you have got this position? Right? What are you going to do to the guy? So I post that. I go, if you look at it, it's actually made up of physiology, physics, and psychology. And so those are three systems. And then what we do is we only ever look at what the bad guy does, because if there's no bad guy, there's no confrontation. So we look at how the bad guy influences you. So that's a system. He's a system and you're a system. And then we do scenarios built around that where force parallels danger. These are all systems. So I write that really politely. And I go, hey, because he says, like, I like the spear system. I recommend it, but it's not a system. And so I post all that and he comes back. He goes, hey, I'm pretty experienced. I'm a former military and I'm a combatives instructor. I still don't think it's a system. And I'm like, it's just that person online who goes, I said, man, I wrote this thing and we're arguing about, you don't like that I used Helvetica and you prefer Arial font. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. So a lot of these
self-defense schools, in a way, they're kind of doing it wrong, in a raw way. If we're always starting with the gun out, with the choke in, with the attacker on me, with the armbar here, with the person putting me, it's so. In a way, they're almost all kind of getting it a little bit wrong.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. I've gotten a lot of trouble.
I'm seeing it right now.
Yeah. And what's amazing, guys, is like Michael and I have never met, and he's saying that because he can visualize it in his head after 27 years of training and been in fights, sport fights, real fights, training, and it's not that they're doing it wrong. And I know what you're saying. I'm just being polite here. I'm being the 58-year-old politician.
Yeah, I took it a little harder with the wrong.
Yeah. But I expect your next post, you guys are fucking doing it wrong. Just so you can have your inbox attacked. But it's what they're doing is they're, in a non-malicious way, they're leaving out D1 and D2. So we got the 3 Ds, detect, diffuse, defend. Everyone practices the defend part, the physical part. And what they need to be doing, if they're truly going to enhance safety and survivability, is to look at the situational awareness. So I tell people, detect and avoid. If you can't avoid, now you're in a verbal confrontation. If you can't de-escalate, it's going to go physical. Now what are you going to do? And then in there's the preemptive stuff. So we did a thing like where I said to people, there's actually a video about this where I said, the title is, you don't want to know how to get out of a headlock. You want to know how to intercept a headlock. And so would you rather slip a punch and then jab, or would you rather do an overhand right while the guy's jabbing? Right? And so the counterattack is always the safer play. But in order to be a good counterattacker, you need to understand the pre-contact cues that put you in position to counterattack. Right? And self-defense is very different. And we come back to the unconscious bias that if I say to a boxer randomly, I call up a boxer, I go, hey, you're about to get mugged. The guy doesn't have a weapon. You don't believe he has a weapon with his hand in his pocket. He's pointing in his pocket, but you can pretty much think it's a pretend gun and he's trying to intimidate you. You're going to hit him. What are you going to do? If I ask a boxer, you're going to hit him. You're going to try and beat him to the punch. What are you going to do? He's going to say body shot, uppercut. Right? If I say to a Taekwondo player, you can make your first move now, what are you going to do? He's not going to say body hook. He's going to say round kick, back kick, front kick. If I say to a jiu-jitsu player, what are you going to do? I'm going to take him down and fucking choke him out. I'm going to arm bar him. And what I'm saying is, like, what we do is we unconsciously deploy from our toolbox in our mind the skills we always practice. And so I say to people, your unconscious bias might put you in more danger in a truly violent encounter, where really what you should have been doing is fucking tightening your shoelaces and fucking getting the hell out of there. Yep. Right? So that's really the big message.
That makes so much sense, Tony. It's stupefying. It makes too much sense what you're saying.
I appreciate that, man. Hey, listen, like, I fucking hijacked this thing, but you asked a really good question. I don't even think I ever answered your question about, how do you teach? The woman's got to be interested. Like, the guy's got to.
I don't even care about that question anymore.
Yeah.
I like what you had to say. It was way better.
But thank you. But the true answer, I've said this to people. Listen, I fired clients, right? But what about this? What about this? I go, listen, you're not ready to even understand this because you're unconsciously finding like counters. You're just being contrarian, so you don't have to pull the trigger and actually come to a class or do a course. At the end of the day, you're the first responder in your confrontation. If you're not worried, if you're not concerned about understanding more about situational awareness and avoiding violence, you won't get to the next stage. And my big push is, like, I don't really train citizens. I train instructors who recognize that. And I've got jiu-jitsu instructors, I got Taekwondo instructors, I got boxing instructors. And what they do is they come to this trainer course and they're there saying, look, man, we're going to work out all week, but Friday night come in, we're going to talk about situational awareness. We're going to do some scenarios, because what would really suck is if something ever happened to you and I didn't teach you anything about avoidance and de-escalation and the nature of real violence. And it's scary shit, man. It's fucking scary shit. Hey, let's.
Hey, I learned so much right now, Tony.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this and absorb it.
We've been on way too long. I've hijacked your life.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
Let's do another call with. I'm gonna get a bunch of things here, and we'll you're a fun, cool guy. I love what you're doing online. Tell people who don't know how to find you, where to find you on Facebook and Instagram and other places.
Instagram, Mr. Jiu-Jitsu page. On regular Facebook, you can either Michael Mihas or Mr. Jiu-Jitsu on Facebook. I did not come up with that name. My buddies used to call me that from a young age because that's all I was fucking talking about. Still all I talk about.
Right.
So I just stuck with the moniker.
Nice. And I'll tag that in the show. And what we'll do is every so often we'll just like get on and rant about martial artists and weird shit.
Would love to.
And try to inspire people. Michael, thank you so much. It was fun getting to know you. And like I said, seriously, I was being truly honest. I hope our friendship grows and we get to meet and connect one of these days.
Definitely will. I appreciate it, Tony.
Okay. Be safe, man.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, dude.